The Book of Destiny. Translation of Kitab-ul-Taqdeer. Author: Ghulam Ahmed Parwez. Translated by Dr. Ejaz Rasool. Glasgow, UK. ISBN number 9798884207042. 7 Chapter 7, Good and Evil. From the study of the history of human thought, this reality appears before us that among the issues of life, no issue has confused man as much as the issue of good and evil has baffled and stumped him. The problem of good and evil is, in reality, an intrinsic part of the issue of Taqdeer. Therefore this problem has not just been the intellectual and visionary focus of only philosophers, it has also been the center of attention of religionists. In this connection, this conundrum has been presented with intense persuasion, ascribed to St. Thomas Aquinas, when he states that, if the existence of evil is as a result of the will of God, then he cannot be absolute good, and if evil exists despite the will of God, then God cannot be declared to be omnipotent. Since in this book we have maintained this modus operandi that we will not entangle ourselves in philosophical arguments or intellectual discourses around issues related to Taqdeer. Instead, by discussing these issues in simple language, we will suffice by presenting the Quranic teachings about it. Hence, we will not go into those details about what human thinking was in this regard, from the time of the Greek philosophers to the modern era, and what was asserted. Here we will only illustrate what those dilemmas are from the perspective of human thought at an ordinary level, due to being stuck in which the human mind has continued to be trapped in this tussle for thousands of years, and with this background we will describe what solution the Quran presents regarding these complexities. 7.1 The sentiments of sensitive hearts. It is well known that Buddha was the son of a Raja, and the crown prince of a state. Though he was a prince, nature had endowed him with a very compassionate heart and a sensitive disposition. He saw that a cat gobbles up a rat, and a dog pounces on a cat. The chick of a hen is seized by an eagle, and a lion rips apart a deer and devours it. Then he witnessed that a poor man dies a slow death from starvation and an impoverished invalid dies in agonies of pain. His sensitive heart could not tolerate this. And from this he reached the conclusion that this world is simply an abode of afflictions and hardships. And to escape these afflictions and hardships, there is no remedy other than that man should abandon the world, and abandon it to such an extent that no desire even should emerge in his heart. When such a condition is created from cutting himself off from the world, then he will enter a state of total absence of sentiments which is called nirvana, and in this way he will achieve salvation. Mukti from worldly afflictions and hardships. Later on, these impressions of his acquired the status of philosophy, which is continuing to overshadow the human mind for the last 2,500 years. 7.2 Detestation of the material world. Since earth was the name for the world of water and land, i.e. matter, hence from this the maxim was derived that matter is a quagmire in which the human soul has become severely trapped. The objective of human life is to release the soul from this imprisonment by matter. The technique for this, too, is to withdraw from society, and this goal can be achieved through various meditations and privations. This maslak is called tasawwuf, which is continuing to prevail in every nation of the world, although its name has been different among different nations. 7.3 The Creed of Reincarnation. Tanasuk. When Hindu philosophers pondered on this question, that why is it that some people in the world live a life of extreme comfort and luxury while others suffer hardships and troubles all their life, they reached this conclusion that those people who had performed good deeds in their previous life receive prosperities and bounties in the present life. Those who performed evil deeds remain afflicted by hardships. This ideology was, in fact, another name for transmigration of the soul, which was a creation of Greek thought, and from where Hindu religionists borrowed it. 7.4 The Christian belief of original sin. Some thinkers, when they witness that lies, deceits, stealing, injustice, and cruelty is commonplace in the world, reached this conclusion that the very nature of man happens to be evil. Christianity moved one step further and established the edifice of original sin on this basis. It stated that the effect of the sin which was committed by Adam and his wife in paradise is that every human child comes into this world already tainted with this original sin. And this contamination is the root cause of all moral evils of human beings. The only way to remove this is for man to acquire belief in the crucifixion and atonement of Jesus Christ. 7.5 The duality of Zoroastrians. Persian thinkers said that no, this is not the way it is. The matter is like this, that two permanent and mutually opposing forces are at war with each other right from the beginning in the world. One is the force of Zulmat, darkness, which is called Ahriman, and the other is the force of Nur, light, which is called Yazdan. A battle is continually raging between these two, which is known as the tussle between good and evil. This dualism is the religion of ancient Persian Zoroastrians, which is attributed to Zarathustra. It is this very battle between opposing forces in the universe which gave birth to the German philosopher Hegel's doctrine of dialecticism, and on which the structure of the economic doctrine of Marx is raised. 7.6 Schopenhauer's philosophy of pessimism. One ideology is that there are simply no opposing forces in the world, those forces which we consider as being opposing. The state of their opposition is the way in which we say, for example, right and left, up or down. These are merely relative terms. From this aspect, the view of one school of thought is that evil does not exist in the world, there is only good. Contrary to this, another school of thought, whose imam is Schopenhauer, holds the belief that the world is only evil, good simply does not exist in it. This doctrine is, in reality, simply an echo from the past of the ideology of Buddha. The individual who has a fertile mind but, unfortunately, his nerves are weak, pessimism then essentially dominates his intellect. This was what happened with Schopenhauer. One school of thought considers that good and evil do not have an external existence, they are names for those impressions which man deduces from various events. For example, if a windstorm or flood due to rain occurs in some jungle where no human being lives, we do not call it destruction. Sure. But if that same storm or flood creates havoc in a hamlet, then we term it as evil. Or an even more pertinent example is that of the darkness of night, which is good for a burglar and bad for a traveler. Hence, according to them, good and evil are internal perceptions of man, they have no intrinsic existence in themselves. Briefly, these are those vortices regarding the conundrum of good and evil in which human thought, transfixed by the complexities of magic, is stuck going around in circles for thousands of years, and from which it sees no possibility of extricating itself. The fact is that these convolutions are not created by good and evil, rather these are a creation of the human mind itself. He invents them himself, and when he becomes entangled in their knots, then he starts to wail and shriek that I cannot see any solution for escape from these. Let us see what guidance the Quran gives us in this respect. 7.7 The Quranic teaching. First of all, take the events in the external universe which are called natural evil. It is the declaration of the Quran that we created not the heavens, the earth, and all that is between but for haqq. 15:85. There are numerous verses on this subject in the Quran. In other words, Allah has created the universe bil haqq. The word haqq has many meanings, but from the point of view of the topic being discussed, its fundamental meaning is such a thing whose outcome is constructive, not destructive. In contrast to this, the meaning of batil is that which produces destructive outcomes. It becomes clear from this that, according to the Quran, the purpose of all things in the universe and whatever takes place within it is constructive, not destructive. In other words, their outcome is khair, good, not shar, evil. We have seen that there are innumerable forces functioning in the universe. These are called the forces of nature, and all of them remain busy operating according to the laws established by Allah. We have also seen that the potential to acquire knowledge of these laws has been kept within man. As he continues to acquire knowledge of these laws, the forces of nature will fall within his control, until one day he will harness all of these forces. Allah has proclaimed that, and he has subjected to you, as from him, all that is in the heavens and on earth. 45:13. In other words, the whole universe has been subjugated to man. Until such a time that man does not gain knowledge of the law about some force of nature, called scientific discoveries, that force remains uncontrolled and unharnessed, and becomes a cause of destruction for man. When he harnesses it by acquiring knowledge about it, thousands of constructive tasks can be derived from it. In the era of infancy of the human intellect, when he had not yet acquired knowledge about the laws of nature, all the forces of nature were unbridled, rather a cause of destruction and devastation for him. As he started to gain knowledge about them and continued to harness them, instead of being harmful, they kept becoming beneficial. 7.8 Appreciation of scholars of thought and research. Those things were created to produce beneficial outcomes, but man did not know the technique to obtain benefits from them. The Quran has declared these men of conviction and thought and scientists conducting research and investigations as deserving of admiration, who through continuous reflection and reasoning, and sustained research and inquiry, provide the practical evidence of the truth about the claim of the universal forces following Haqq. It is stated in Surah Al-Imran, for those people who make use of intellect and vision, in the creation of the universe and the alternation of day and night there are great signs to reach reality, that is for those men of intelligence and vision, and those possessing thought and insight, who in every aspect of life, standing, sitting, lying down, keep the laws of Allah in their sight, and reflect on the created composition of the universe, and following their research based on their understanding and vision, declare fully convinced that, O our Rabb, you have not created anything in the universe for the production of destructive outcomes. Your being is far above this, that you will create the system of the universe without purpose, and for the production of destructive effects. This is our deficiency of knowledge and short-sightedness, that we do not make use of research, and by remaining ignorant of the beneficial aspects of the universe in this way, keep suffering losses and calamities. Bestow this ability on us that, by carrying out informed research and practical experimentation, we obtain precise benefits from the things of the universe, and in this way, we remain protected from the destructive aspects of life. The nations which remain deprived of the benefits of the things of the universe by not conducting this kind of research, the fields of their efforts and endeavors turn into ashes, and they live a life of ruin and humiliation, and it is obvious that such humiliated and ruined nations do not have any helper and companion. 3. 190-192. Those who reflect and reason on the system of the universe in this way are declared to be Allama, scholars, by the Quran. 35:27-28. 7.9 The forces of nature. O Rabb, you have not created all this as batil. 3. 191. For the practical proof of this, an outcome of research is that those immense forces of nature, which due to being violent and unbridled used to cause colossal destructions, as a result of which man used to consider that they are only evil, shar. When man brought them under his control, then they became the source for thousands of benefits and began to be seen as only good. Care. When rainwater is not within the control of man, it becomes a flood bringing destruction, but when man confines it within its shores, then it becomes a messenger of fresh life for barren land and a supporter of life. If the flames of a fire are uncontrolled, then town after town is turned into a heap of ashes, but when it is brought under human control, then it becomes completely beneficial. Snakes, scorpions, and hundreds of other different kinds of poisonous animals, etc., which were not seen as anything other than death flying about and harm walking around, and regarding which no one understood why Allah had created them. Such medicines are now being prepared from their very poisons, which are the cure for hundreds of deadly diseases. A living and tangible example is that same individual who is writing these lines at this moment in time, and is presenting his reflections to his readers. The story is that in 1964 I underwent an operation. Though the operation was successful, after this, due to a mishap, there was such a severe hemorrhage that it could not be stemmed. The consultant, who apart from being an expert in his field, was an embodiment of sincerity and affection, did everything in his power, but all to no avail. The situation reached such a point that I became unconscious, and relatives as well as the doctor himself became hopeless about my life. My breathing became uneven, and as a last resort, the doctor administered an injection. The hemorrhage halted, I opened my eyes, and I gradually returned from the desolate plains of death to the valleys of life. I later asked the doctor what was that elixir of life which served as the resurrecting remedy. He told me that the name of this medicine is reptilase, which is prepared from the venom of a snake. On hearing this part of verse 191 burst forth spontaneously from my lips. O Rab! You have not created it? This universe. As Batil Iqbal has stated from the lips of Adam, in the conversation between Allah and Adam, that you created stone, I turned it into a mirror. You created venom, I turned it into an elixir. If you wish to seek living evidence of I turned it into an elixir, then go to any pharmacy. You will find about 90% of the packaging with poison written on it. And every medicine among these will be the treatment for some disease or other, and in this way, every venom will be declaring from its lips that, O Rab, you did not create me for destructive results. This was the short-sightedness of man, that he had viewed it as such. 7.10 Congenital deformities in children. This was the same inadequacy of human knowledge due to which he could not even understand why some children are born disabled, even blind. He tried his best to guess, and finally reached this conclusion that these diseases and disabilities are the consequence of some evil deeds from their previous life. What more could he possibly think beyond this? But when man advanced in scientific research, he also discovered the secret of these occurrences. Consequently, the state of developed nations is such that they first of all medically examine the couple intending to marry to check that they are not suffering from any such condition which may be transmitted congenitally to the child. After becoming satisfied from this aspect, they keep monitoring the foetus in the mother's womb and keep providing the necessary means of protection to it there. It is the consequence of these scientific discoveries and good planning that in these nations children are generally born strong and healthy. They are continuing to undertake further research in this field so that measures can also be taken to prevent those disabilities and infirmities in children which have not yet fallen within their grasp. 7.11 The issue of pain. The severest and most chastising example of evil is quoted to be pain, and the one who is suffering from pain simply cannot be made to understand its philosophy. The ability to think and reason usually becomes suspended in a state of severe pain. But experts in the field of disease state that pain is but a remedy from nature. The machinery of the human body is so complex and hidden that, leaving aside another human being, one does not even know oneself how this is functioning, and whether some flaw is arising in it. In order to notify that some fault or malfunction has arisen in this machinery, nature has built a mechanism in it which is called pain. Pain is, in fact, that alarm which signals danger, which keeps calling, in fact shouting to warn about impending danger. If this bell does not ring, then no one will even be able to know that some malfunction is occurring within the machine till such a time that the machine eventually comes to a stop. That is, the death of man takes place. From this point of view, pain is, in reality, a blessing. But like other processes of nature, This process is also rather crude, hence man is trying to discover some technique in its place by which an impending danger can be known beforehand, but no pain and agony should accompany this. Intense and focused research is taking place in this connection. At this moment in time I have before me a published article by a research scholar, George A. W. Boehm, in which he has asserted that in view of the speed with which this research is taking place, it can be expected that in the next 10 years man will be rid of bodily pain. I pray to Allah that it may indeed be thus. Be that as it may, we were discussing that as human knowledge continues to advance, the aspect of evil, shar, of the things of the universe keeps transforming into good. Care. 7.12 The quantity used of things, together with discovering the properties of the things of the universe. It is also essential to find out what quantity of their use supports life, and in what quantity it is life-threatening, in other words, to acquire knowledge about the Taqdeer scales of these things. 1 glass of water is life-giving, but if that same water enters the stomach in a far larger quantity, then death occurs due to it. This is how a man dies from drowning. Glaring evidence of how much importance their Taqdeer scales holds in the use of things is seen in the homeopathic method of treatment. The focal point of this method of treatment is that those kinds of unpleasant effects which arise in the human condition from ingesting an excessive amount of something, the remedying of these effects takes place through a homeopathic dose of this. Through this principle they have proven that the true essence of everything in the universe is care. It is from its incorrect quantity that it becomes shar. 7.12.1 Min shar-e makaleka. 113. 2. And from this the meaning of this illuminating verse of the Quran can be easily understood, in which is stated, say, I seek refuge with the Rabb of Falak from the shar of created things. 113. 1-2. In other words, take precautions that whatever Allah has created in the universe, these do not become shar for you due to their incorrect use. That is, Allah has not created shar. He has kept different properties and effects in the things of the universe. Whether they are harmful or beneficial is now dependent on how you use them. If you use them according to the physical laws established by Allah, then their outcome will be care. If you use them contrary to these, then shar will be created as a result. It is on this basis that it is stated as a principle in Surah Al-Imran. All care is in your hand. Verily you have defined scales for all things. 3. 26. 7.13 Allah is the fountainhead of care. Allah did not create shar, He created the things of the universe and defined their Taqdeer. If they are utilized according to these, then the outcome will be only care, because Allah is the fountainhead of care. If they are utilized contrary to these, then shar becomes created from this, that is, shar is an outcome created by man himself. This is that supreme reality which has been clearly described in Surah An-Nisa. We have already discussed this verse earlier, but because of the importance and relevance of the point being discussed, we feel it is necessary to reiterate it. That verse is this: whatever bounties you receive, they are from Allah. And whatever troubles descend on you, they are brought about by your own hands. 4. 79. And in the verse before this it is stated, say, all outcomes are established according to the laws defined by Allah. 4. 78. If you act according to these laws, then the outcome will be care only. If you go against them, then it will be shar only. At another place it is stated, whatever is received from the direction of Allah, that is, by acting in accordance with the laws defined by Him, that is care, and also enduring. 28. 60. At certain places this reality has been described in a very refined manner. For example, it is stated in Surah Bani Israel, when we bless man with our bounties, he turns away and becomes indifferent, and when he suffers some loss, he becomes hopeless. 17. 83. See also 41. 51. Here Allah has not related loss or shar towards himself. At another place it is stated, when we impart happiness to man through Ramad, he becomes boastful. When he suffers a loss due to his own errors, then he sinks down in despair. 30. 36. See also 42. 48. In Surah Al-Araf, the style has become even more refined and eloquent when it is stated that the fertile land produces a very good crop according to the law of Rab, by the izn of its Rab. But when it is barren, then the land gives very little produce. 7. 58. Just note that it is not stated in the second part of the verse that this is with his izn, even though this also takes place according to the law of Allah. 7.14 Khair and Shar in Ethics. So far we have discussed the physical characteristics and properties of the things of the universe, their method of physical use and the beneficial and harmful effects produced by them. But in the human world another aspect of good and evil also appears before us, which is not connected to physical laws. The physical property of a sword is that it cuts the throat. If this sword is in the hand of a tyrant, then he will use it to cut the throats of the weak and persecuted. But if that same sword is in the hands of a justice-loving human being, by twisting the wrists of the tyrants, he will produce the means of protection for those who are persecuted. The sword remains the same and its physical property also remains the same, but the purpose for which it is used becomes the criterion for its becoming khair or shar. 7.15 The aim and criterion of khair and shar. Let us take a step further from even here. An individual extorts money from someone through deception. In this deception no physical means, for example a sword, etc., has been used, only the human intellect has been employed for this. You mention this loss of yours to a friend who is shrewder and cleverer. He formulates such a plan due to which that deceitful fellow has to return your money. In this your friend has also simply employed intellect. It is clear from this, too, that the human intellect is also a force and it becomes khair or shar according to the purpose for which it is used. 7.16 The aim can be defined by wahi. The question is how to define those aims according to which the material forces or the potentials of man himself become khair instead of shar. It is obvious that these aims cannot be ascertained using the human intellect, because how can intellect provide an answer to the question of what aim should it be used for? Just as a sword cannot itself define the aim of its use, in the same way the human intellect also cannot define the aim of its own use itself. For this there should be a fountainhead beyond the human intellect. This fountainhead is divine wahi, and the criteria which are determined according to wahi are called the permanent values in the terminology of deen. When the forces of nature, things of the universe, or the human intellect itself is employed according to the permanent values of Allah, then its outcome will be khair. When these are employed counter to these values, then its outcome will be shar. A society which rejects the permanent values of Allah and establishes its social system exclusively on the foundations of intellect is called a system of batil because its outcome is shar for man. In such a society the utilization of the forces of nature and the things of the universe is through the intellect, and the intellect is employed according to emotions. Regarding emotions, we have seen earlier that this is basically the name for those instincts which man has received as an inheritance from his animalistic life. And the emotions of preservation of the self and self-aggression are intrinsic in these instincts. When these same emotions acquire a collective form from an individual one, then the meaning of self-preservation is the preservation of one's own nation. Now just reflect that when different nations exist in the world, and every nation utilizes the forces of nature according to its own individual intellect, self-interest, for its own self-preservation and to gain control over others, then what will be the consequence of this? That same hell in which today all the nations of the world are severely trapped. In other words, that hell which is fueled by those flames which are manufactured by utilizing the forces of nature in defiance of the permanent values. 7.17 Hell of the modern era. This is that very system of batil in which those human beings who wish to live their life according to the permanent values have to bear all kinds of hardships. It is in connection with this that it is stated about the evils of that society. Whose evil embers fly far and wide. 76. 7. By disregarding the permanent values. When humanity becomes divided into nations, some among the nations become more powerful and other nations remain weak, and powerful nations keep on becoming stronger by sucking the blood of the weaker nations. In this way, different classes become created in a nation. In these classes, the upper class sets itself up as masters of the wealth and power of the nation, and the underprivileged class becomes their servant by becoming subordinate to them and their dependents. 7.18 Rich and poor by birth. Then according to the system of batil, the children born to the upper class are born not only with the conveniences of life, rather with a complete set of luxuries, and the children born in the dwellings of the lower class spend their whole life in struggle and poverty. And since the criterion for respect and dignity in society is declared to be wealth, hence these poor and underprivileged human beings and their children, despite possessing all the human potentials, are considered to be lowly and debased. The Hindu clergy concocted this justification for this inequality. That differentiation in rank and economic status is a result of the deeds in the previous life of an individual. The one who commits the greatest number of wrongs is born as a Shudra. The one higher up than this is Vaishya, then Kshatriya, and above everyone else are Brahmins themselves. It is obvious that when the ones who define these ranks are Brahmins, if the uppermost class is not professed to be that of Brahmins, then who else can it be? 7.19 This is from Allah regarding this differentiation in classes. The people who disagreed with the doctrine of a previous life stated that these are defined by Allah. Whoever He wishes, He makes him rich. Whoever He wishes, He can keep him deprived and poor. He can confer respect and status on whoever He wishes. He can degrade and humiliate whoever He wishes. This is the destiny and fate of every single person. This is what is known as the Taqdeer of man, which no individual can make for himself nor erase. They concocted this belief, and continued to reiterate it with such persistence and intensity that the populace became endlessly prey to this hoax. This intrigue was instigated so that the gazes of the populace would not look up to see that this differentiation and division is not from Allah. Rather, it is the creation of this wrong system whose establishment and strength the upper class is responsible for. And in the upper class both those in charge of organization and management and this clique offering sermons and homilies are included. As has been noted before, Malikiyat and the religious clergy are both intrinsically dependent on each other. 7.20 The Quran is also a fountainhead of care. After this, let us return to this illuminating verse of the Quran in which it is stated that hasanat, delights of life, are all received from the direction of Allah, and hardships and troubles are brought about by your own hands. These hardships and troubles are a product of this evil system which comes into existence through transgression against the permanent values of Allah. If a society is established in accordance with these values, then there are showers of hasanat from every direction. These values are preserved within the Quran. This is why the Quran itself has also been proclaimed as care. It is stated in Surah An-Nahl. These opponents asked the Jamaat-e-Momineen, "What has your Rabb sent down in your direction?" In reply they say that He has sent down care. 16:30. In other words, Allah Himself is the fountainhead of care, and the code of laws sent down from His direction is also care, by acting in accordance with which human life becomes care through and through. Shar becomes produced by going against it, care from His side, shar at our own invitation. My cupbearer served nectar, clear and transparent, whatever color you perceive in it, it is my doing. What is this care? In explanation of this it is stated, those people who live their life in a balanced way in accordance with the permanent values, they are bestowed with both the delights of this life, and also the delights of the life of the hereafter. 16:30. From here another definition of care appears before us which merits our attention. In physical life, or at an animalistic level, the criterion for care and shar, or benefit and loss, is very clear, simple, and straightforward. The thing, or task, from which we obtain a material benefit is care, that from which there is a material loss is shar. In this matter it is also worth bearing another thing in mind, that according to this criterion nothing can be declared as being a cause for care or a cause for shar on a permanent basis. The very same thing which is beneficial at one point in time, according to the circumstances pertaining at that time, can be harmful at another time. With a change in circumstances, milk is beneficial in a state of good health and harmful during a cough, or cold, and flu symptoms. Or, based on quantity, 1 glass of water is beneficial, while a bucket of water is harmful. From this point of view it is stated that good and evil are relative, not absolute. 7.21 The criterion for absolute good and evil. But when life is viewed at the human level, that is when it is acknowledged that human life does not only consist of the physical body alone. There is an entity other than the body which is called the human self, then another criterion of good and evil appears before us. Benefit and loss. And that is that those matters through which the human self becomes developed, from which integration is produced within it, are care, and those from which its development halts, and disintegration occurs within it, are shar. Since the human self is non-physical and at this point in time invisible, hence the scales for measurement of its care and shar are also not visible. For example, every individual can know and recognize what harm transpires from ingesting poison, but what harm occurs to the human self from telling a lie can neither be seen nor measured. Contrary to this, there can be a material benefit from telling a lie. The reality is that man only tells a lie at that time when he has an expectation of gaining some benefit. Without the expectation of some benefit, only an insane person will tell a lie. 7.22 The materialistic concept of life and morality. From these explanations it is clear that as far as the human self is concerned, neither its criterion for harm or benefit, nor its scales of measurement are physical. Its standard is the permanent values which are called morals in common terminology. It should be made clear that morals relate to human life. There can simply be no concept of morals among animals. In a society in which the human self is not acknowledged, there is no basis for morals. It is called the materialistic concept of life, and that system of living is called secularism. In this there are only the laws of society, social laws or laws of justice, without which the communal life of man cannot remain in place. The majority among these social laws, or laws of justice, are those which are called moral codes. For example, do not lie, do not deceive, do not do wrong to someone, etc., etc. But their status is that of social laws or laws of justice, not of morals, even though in common parlance these are termed morals. This difference can be understood through an example. If an individual knows that by telling a lie he will obtain a certain benefit, and he also has the assurance that this lie of his cannot come to the notice of society, nor within the grip of the machinery of the court system, then according to the materialistic concept of life there will be nothing which can prevent him from telling a lie. If an individual does not tell a lie due to fear of loss of reputation in society, or due to the concern of being arraigned by a court of law, then he will not be considered as a possessor of an eminent character. Contrary to this, the individual who acknowledges the existence of the human self and keeps an eye on its benefit and loss will not tell a lie even at that time when he has certainty that his lie can neither be noticed by society, nor by the jurisdiction of the court, and when by telling a lie he will benefit greatly materially. He will not tell a lie because he knows that there will be a loss to his self from this. Even though he will benefit materially, he will sacrifice the material benefit for the sake of the benefit of his self. This is what is called morality. It will be called being moral. From the Quranic point of view, the definition of character, balanced conduct, is that where there is a clash between a material benefit and a permanent value, man sacrifices the material benefit for the sake of the preservation of the permanent value. That is, for the sake of the benefit to his self. In the materialistic concept of life, or the secular system, there is the concept of obedience to the law, but there cannot be the concept of morals. There is no basis for morals in it, and this is the reason why there are amendments taking place in its code of laws every other day, that is, their status is also relative. In contrast to this, the status of the code of values which relates to the human self is not relative, those values are permanent and immutable, and the good or evil which materializes as a consequence of these, that is care by obeying them, and shar by contravening them, is called absolute good and absolute evil. In other words, 1. It cannot happen that deceit is a cause for evil at one time and a cause for good at another time. 2. Nor can it be that more dishonesty is a cause for evil while a little dishonesty is a cause for good. 3. Or that in some era honesty and integrity were good, and later on lies and deceit became good, or will become good. The permanent values, which are related to the human self, are permanent, immutable, and absolute. Since there is simply no concept of permanent values in a wrong society, or in a batil system, if an individual in it wishes to live life according to the permanent values, then he often has to bear material losses. In this tussle, the advice of the maslak of monasticism, tasawwuf, is that because this matter, or worldly affairs, is worthy of contempt, therefore do not allow even the thought of material benefit or loss to enter your heart. The true reality of life is abandonment of the world. But this is self-deception. While living in the world, you simply cannot abandon the world. In this regard, the teaching of the Quran is that if a society is established according to the permanent values, then such a situation simply cannot arise in which there is a confrontation between a material benefit and a benefit to the self of man. This is why it tells people that instead of living an individual life, live a collective life in which the society becomes established on the foundations of the permanent values. In this you will achieve material benefits and the development of yourself will also keep taking place. The Quran terms material benefits as worldly delights, and benefits to the self as delights of the hereafter. This is because the life of the hereafter is related to the human self, not to the human body. In light of these explanations, this reality has become apparent to us that according to the Quran, absolute good is that through which worldly benefits can be achieved, and also the benefits of the hereafter, that is through which the physical life of man is prosperous and his self also keeps becoming stronger. And absolute evil is that which produces results contrary to this. And now the meaning of this verse of Surah An-Nahl becomes crystal clear before us, in which it is stated that when the Mu'mineen are asked what has been sent down to you, they reply, care, good. In other words, according to which material benefits are achieved, and also benefits associated with the human self. 16:30. It is this pattern of life which is called ad-din. From this it is clear that 1. The materialistic concept of life, or secular system of living, is that in which the aim and goal is merely material benefits. This is also against ad-din. 2. The maslak of monasticism, tasawwuf, is that in which the material world is declared to be worthy of contempt. This is also against ad-din. 3. Ad-din, the Islamic system of life, is that in which both the benefits of the material world are achieved and the development of the human self. This is absolute good. This is that care about which it is stated that this is achieved through iman and taqwa, that is firm conviction in Allah and the human self, and observance of the permanent values. If these people live their life according to iman and taqwa, then they will get care from Allah. If only they could know this reality. 2. 103. Those people who achieve the prosperities of life and expansion of the human self are the ones declared to be abrar, righteous. At another place. 3. 198. It is cautioned in Surah An-Nahl that when there is a tussle between material benefits and permanent values, then at that time do not purchase the material benefit in place of a permanent value. If you do not do this, that is, you prioritize the benefit of yourself, then you will obtain care from the direction of Allah. 16. 95. At another place this is described as care for your own nafs, self. 64. 16. Those people in the depths of whose hearts Iman in the human self has not entered, consider it to be in their interest to give preference to the material benefit in this kind of tussle. This is the erroneous outlook in the differentiation between khair and shar referring to which it is stated. It is possible that you dislike one thing and there is khair in that for you. And it can also be possible that you desire something very much and it is a cause of shar for you. The way to avoid this kind of muddle in this differentiation between khair and shar is that you do not declare your own knowledge as being the criterion, instead declare the knowledge of Allah, Wahi, as the foundation and criterion. 2. 216. That which it declares as being khair, consider it to be khair, and that which it declares as being shar, consider it to be shar. The most challenging stage in the tussle between physical life and the permanent values is that where man has to lay down even his life for the sake of the preservation of haqq. This is called the arena of jihad, or qitl. At such a delicate juncture the instruction of the Quran is that you enter the amphitheater of war fully prepared, without fear and irrespective of danger. If you fix your gaze on the reality and truth of life, you will discover that this very thing is a cause of care for you. 9. 41. Man becomes deceived in this respect because the interests of physical life are visible right in front of him, while the outcomes of care take time to manifest. And man who fixes his gaze only on the physical life happens to be very hasty. 17. 11. 7.22.1 Ibtila, accountability of own self. When there is a tussle between the interests of material benefits and the human self, at that time man tests this aspect about how much strength has been created in his self. If his self is strong, then he will not become overwhelmed by the allurement of material interests in this confrontation. This stage is called Ibtila, that is an opportunity for man to test himself. When the human self overcomes material temptations at such junctures, further strength becomes created in it as a result, and this is the kind of strengthened self which also cannot die with death. This is why the Quran has declared death to be the yardstick for measuring the strength of the human self. 21. 35, 67. 2. And this is why it has instructed that do not obey the laws of Allah in such a way that if benefits can be accrued by following them, then you obey them, and when there will be a loss from this, then you transgress them. This conduct of self-interest is a recipe for disaster. There are among men some who obey the divine law, but in such a way as if they are standing on a verge. If they see a benefit in obeying this law, then they remain content in it, but if some kind of loss accrues to them from it, then they turn their faces away unhesitatingly. 4. 143. The outcome of following this path is that the life of their present becomes ruined and also that of the future, loss in the world, and also in the hereafter, and this loss is so glaring for which there is no need for evidence and rationale. 22. 11. 7.22.2 Man of the modern era. Now just ponder that when from the point of view of the Quran, those people will suffer a loss and remain unsuccessful in whose sights the importance of the benefits of the human self becomes diminished. Then those people who right from the beginning are not even convinced about the human self. That is the life of the hereafter. What differentiation will they be able to make between the true benefit and loss to human life? This is that very condition of man of the modern era about whom Iqbal states, Absence of motivation. On the path of Allah and pursuit of his own desires, unable to bring his intellect under his vision, became entangled in the maze of his intellect, unable to decide his benefit and loss until today. This is that human being about whom the Quran has stated that he who should have been desiring care, continually calls out to shar. 17. 11. From these explanations it is clear that care and shar are the outcomes of human deeds themselves. If he employs the forces of nature and his own potentials according to the permanent values of Allah, then the outcome is care, and if he employs them against these values, then the outcome is shar. In order to weigh this care and shar, the scales of the law of requital of Allah are ever ready, and it is according to this weighing that the verdict for the success and failure of human life is given. If the balance tilts heavily towards care, then life is successful, and if it remains light, then his life remains a failure and unsuccessful. According to these scales of measurement, every single atom of care and shar of human deeds will appear in front of him. 99. 7-8. It is also clear from these verses that care and shar are the outcomes of man's own deeds. It is not the case that Allah has already decided the care and shar in advance for every human being. In other words, what has been decided is that the outcome of a certain deed of man will be care, and that of some other deed will be shar. And it has been left to the choice and intent of man that he can do whatever kind of deed he wishes. Its outcome will appear before him in accordance with it, in both the worldly life, and the life of the hereafter. 7.23 Profit and loss. The words of profit and injury have also appeared in the Quran for care and shar. The difference is only of words, otherwise the principle and law that is defined for care and shar is the same as that for profit and injury. We have already seen that when man was not yet aware of the secrets of the universe, then due to terror of the dreadful forces of nature he used to implore profusely and prostrate before them so that he could remain protected from their harmful effects. It was this proclivity for desiring benefit and repulsing harm which produced that concept in his mind about those forces which he began to call gods and goddesses, and after this, having carved physical sculptures of them, he started to worship them. The Quran made man aware of his true status and informed him that those forces which he considers as his deities have all been created to obey him. 7.24 Gods and goddesses cannot convey benefit or loss. For this the Quran has repeatedly stated that there is no power in these false gods which you worship to cause any benefit or loss to reach you. Therefore why do you degrade human eminence by bowing down before them? These people, abandoning Allah, worship those batil deities which can neither cause any benefit to reach them, nor any loss. 25. 55. As has been stated earlier, the Quran has reiterated this fact at numerous places. These people were told that, leaving aside any power to cause you benefit or loss, they do not even possess control over any kind of benefit or loss for their own selves. 13. 16, 25. 3. 7.25 Not even a sage old man. After gods and goddesses, man was also trapped in this false impression that elders and saintly human beings have the power to cause benefit or loss to others as well. For the eradication of such a batil belief, the Quran adopted such a style of admonishment following which it left no room for anything further to be said. For Muslims, who could be and can be a more sacred and holy being than Rasool himself? The Quran itself made this declaration from the honorable lips of Rasool that, say to them, I myself do not have any authority for benefit or loss to my own self. For me, too, this takes place according to the laws of Allah. 7. 188. See also 10. 49. 7.26 Harm from human beings in an unjust society. But some human beings are certainly caused harm at the hands of other human beings. For this it is stated that this is according to Izn Allah. But he, Shaitan, cannot harm them in the least, except as per Izn Allah. 58. 10. We have seen under the previous topic that the meaning of Izn Allah is the laws established by Allah. This is why it is stated that another individual causes harm to reach you because you have not made arrangements for the means of protection according to the laws of Allah. It is stated in Surah Al-Imran that the state of these opponents, Munafiqeen, is such that if you acquire some bounties then this matter pains them greatly, and if a trouble visits you then they are very pleased at this. If you adopt steadfastness and observe the laws of Allah, then none of their intrigues will be able to cause you any harm. 3. 120. At another place it is stated that, if those living in habitations had had conviction in the truth of the laws of Allah and had lived life in accordance with them, then the gates of blessings of the heavens and earth would have opened for them, but they falsified these laws, and they were subjected to accountability because of their deeds. 7. 96. Here the use of because of their deeds has made it clear how losses are incurred according to Izn Allah. All this is the outcome of the wrong actions of man himself. If you keep treading on the right path then no one will be able to cause you any harm. 5. 105. 7.27 Its solution. But here that same issue appears before us again, which was the focus of our attention previously, and that is that despite treading on the right path, an individual suffers at the hands of others. As has already been described, this kind of thing occurs in an unjust society and its remedy is nothing other than for this society to be overturned, and a just society to be established in its place. According to the laws of Allah. Iqbal has illustrated this reality in these radiant words. He does not remain sitting shedding tears at the hands of Taqdeer. By rejecting unfavorable Taqdeer, he brings about favorable Taqdeer in its place through the power of his hands. Since all this takes place according to the laws defined by Allah, hence Allah relates it to his own self. It is noted in Surah Al-An'am. If a loss reaches you from the direction of Allah, that is according to his laws. Its rectification can also be done by no one else. For this you will need to turn towards his laws. This is because he has defined scales, laws, for everything. 6. 17. See also 10. 107, 39. 38. 7.28 An important point. We have stated above that whatever act man carries out according to the laws of Allah, Allah relates it to himself. This is a very important point and, hence, demands further clarification. 7.28.1 The Battle of Badr. In the Battle of Badr, which was the most important event between Haqq and Batil, Mujahideen, whom Allah had termed as his own army, Hezbollah, are busy employing their swords and arrows and in this way are severing the necks of the opponents of Haqq and justice. The declaration of Allah regarding this is, you were not killing them, it was Allah himself who was killing them. At that time it was not you aiming the arrows, it was Allah doing this. 8. 17. The swords were yours, but on their razor-sharp edges it was our Taqdeers which were in action. The arrows were yours, but it was our decisions that were wrapped around their tips. 7.28.2 Beit Irizwan. Fealty of the willing. And at the location of Hudaybiyah, when these devoted soldiers of Islam were renewing this covenant to lay down their lives which they had made with Allah, that we have sold our possessions and lives into your hand. 9. 111. On the blessed hand of Rasulullah, the Quran has drawn a beautiful, simple, and vivid scene of this sight in these words. O Rasool! Those people who were plighting their fealty to you, they were not pledging it with you, but were in reality renewing their covenant with Allah. At the time of this fealty, it was not your hand over their hand, it was the hand of Allah himself. 48. 10. When the program of Allah comes into fruition in this way through the hands of men, then man himself becomes the Taqdeer of Allah. In the words of Iqbal, a Muslim under the spell of Taqdeer is a kafir. If he is a Momin, he himself becomes Allah's Taqdeer. At another place Iqbal states, "It is futile to complain about the Taqdeer of Allah, why are you yourself not the Taqdeer of Allah?" In summary, whatever manifests in the universe according to the divine laws, it is related to Allah Himself, that is, it is stated that Allah Himself does this. This is that point where a visionary proclaims, in the words of Ibrahim, that Allah is He who created me, and then showed me the straight path. He is the one who gives me food and drink, and when I fall sick, He cures me. Then He will give me death, and after death will give me life again. 26. 78-81. Not only are properties and characteristics imparted to the things of the universe, man himself has also been provided with potentials which Allah attributes to Himself. So much so, that even that act which he does according to these natural abilities has also been related towards Allah. For example, it is stated in Surah Ar-Rahman, Allah created man and taught him to speak. 55. 3-4. It is obvious that Allah does not teach a human child to speak, it is his environment which teaches him. But since the ability to speak in man is bestowed by Allah, that is why it is stated that Allah taught man to speak. At another place it is stated, Allah is He who taught man to write with a pen. 96. 4. See also 2. 282. In other words, this ability has been kept within him that he can express his inner thoughts through writing. It is noted in Surah Al-Ma'idah, whatever game that hunting animals catch and bring to you, it is also halal for you. Those animals whom you train to hunt in the way in which Allah has taught you. 5. 4. It is obvious that Allah does not teach any human being how to hunt. He has kept this ability within man, and whatever he does according to this natural ability, Allah has related this to His own self. From these explanations it is clear that the style of the Quran is that whatever takes place in the universe according to the laws of Allah, or whatever man does according to the abilities conferred by nature, it relates these directly towards Allah. This is a very important point. And by keeping it in mind we can easily comprehend all those places in the Quran where, because of this point not being before us, various kinds of opinions form in our minds and doubts arise. Details of these places will appear before us in the coming pages in different chapters. 7.29 Shaitan, Iblis. With regard to not accepting responsibility for the outcome of his own deeds, man has kept another shield in front of him which is called Shaitan or Iblis. In this connection it is important to firstly understand what it is that is known as Shaitan. I have written in detail about this topic in my book, The Human Self and Iblis. At this point in time, it will suffice to mention a few aspects. We have seen that 1. As well as intellect, instincts at the animalistic level are present in man. The task of the intellect is to meet the demands of life. 2. Human life is the name for remaining in obedience to the permanent values. 3. When there is a clash between a permanent value and the interest of an animalistic instinct, motive, then at that juncture if the permanent value remains in control, then the intellect adopts methods to bring its requirements into practical action. And if the animalistic motive overpowers, then the intellect functions in obedience to this. Because at that time the emotions and intellect do not remain under the obedience of the permanent values, they are therefore called rebellious emotions and unbridled intellect. It is these rebellious emotions and unbridled intellect which are called shaitan in Quranic terminology. Some scholars of Lugat think that shaitan is a word of the Arabic language and related to shita, yashitu, which mean to become inflammatory. We have drawn the above interpretation of shaitan according to these meanings. Some consider this word to be from the Hebrew language, which means the one creating obstacles. The hinderer, that is, those forces which stand up to block the path of the permanent values, this also means the same. According to psychology, when man becomes overwhelmed by his rebellious emotions, this gives rise to aggression, that is the desire to subjugate others. In these circumstances the human mind does not stay balanced. When this emotive state cools down, man feels regret at what he has done from this, the consequence of which is frustration and despair. The root of the word iblis is bls, which means to become hopeless. The Quran has described shaitan and iblis as being two sides of the same coin, that is, the rebelliousness of emotions whose ultimate outcome is that of hopelessness. From the above explanations it is clear that shaitan is in reality the name for man's own rebellious emotions. And the second point which we have observed is that the emotions and intellect are neither shar nor khair in their own right. They are only forces, the wrongful use of which leads to evil outcomes and the correct use produces good outcomes. Hence, that ideology or doctrine which declares emotions as being worthy of contempt, in fact to be suppressed, and intellect to be condemned, cannot be considered as acceptable in the court of Islam. Emotions and intellect are the creation of Allah, and we have observed that Allah does not create shar, He is the fountainhead of absolute care. Hence, to declare anything among His creations as being intrinsically shar is a severe crime. Allah forbid against the Creator. But the Zoroastrians of Persia have declared shaitan, Ahriman, to be a permanent being possessing power in itself of shar, and have declared it to be such an entity which has its own existence external to man and remains in continual conflict with Yazdan, God. 7.30 Doctrine of Jabr. Compulsion. Those people who used to seek routes of escape by not accepting responsibility for the consequences of their actions by declaring themselves to be constrained with no choice, took advantage of the doctrine of the entity of shaitan being external to man. Therefore, they concocted this belief that it is shaitan who makes man do all the wrong acts. We have seen at the start that Iblis had disobeyed the command of Allah, but refused to accept his responsibility by stating that you yourself made me commit this transgression. That is, Allah, what choice did I have in this? In other words, refusal to accept responsibility for one's own actions is itself iblisiyat. Following these explanations, let us see what the Quran states regarding the connection between human deeds and shaitan. 7.31 Quranic elucidations. In the story of Adam it is stated in a metaphorical style. Shaitan whispered suggestions in their hearts. Adam and Eve. 7:20. And it is stated in Surah Kaf. We have created man and we know what dark suggestions his nafs keeps creating within him. 50:16. From this it is clear that shaitan is the human self itself, not an external entity or force outside of man. In the Battle of Uhud some people, hypocrites, turned their backs and abandoned the battlefield. It is stated about them that shaitan created faltering in their steps due to their deeds. 3:155. From this it is clear that that which we call shaitanat is another name for the evil deeds of man himself. We have seen that when man is overwhelmed by his emotions, then his mental state becomes unbalanced. It is stated in Surah Yasin that those entering hell will be told that you allowed shaitan emotions to overcome you, and in this way your intellect became paralyzed and so you reached hell. 36:60-62. In Surah Ibrahim a metaphorical dialogue appears between shaitan and his followers on the Day of Judgment. There, human beings who are evildoers accuse shaitan that you made us do these things. In response to this, shaitan states that what you say is wrong, I did not have any control or authority over you that I could have compelled you to do something against your will. All I did was that I called out to you, you yourself acquiesced to this call and started to follow behind me. Today, instead of condemning me, condemn yourself, because I am not responsible for your deeds, it is you yourself who are responsible. 14:22. 7.32 How can man remain protected from being controlled by emotions? Now the question which arises is that, with the existence of emotions, how can man protect himself from being controlled by them? Tasawwuf. Mysticism and Sufism declared that the technique for this is that emotions should be annihilated. In their terminology, this is called self-annihilation. But the way in which their doctrine of forsaking the world is impossible to follow. Indeed is a self-deception. Similarly, the doctrine of annihilation of emotions is also impracticable to follow and is based on self-deception. Human emotions simply cannot be annihilated, and even if, supposing, they could be annihilated, then eliminating them is insanity and a manifest loss. Emotions, like intellect, are an immensely precious faculty of man. The pleasures, freshness, and novelties of life are linked to desires, and the emergence of desires owes itself to emotions. If no heat of emotions remains in the being of man, then he will turn into a mere inanimate block of ice. Regarding emotions, when the guidance of the Quran appears before us, then a euphoric feeling bathes the soul, and it can be clearly seen what the difference is between the light bestowed from the fountainhead of Wahi and the conjectures concocted by the human mind. Firstly, by presenting those people who have adopted the maslak of obedience to emotions without any limits or conditions, it has stated, "Have you ever pondered on the condition of that individual who has made emotions themselves as his deity? The consequence of this path is that, despite possessing intellect and knowledge, he sets out on the wrong paths. And due to being overwhelmed by his emotions, his condition becomes such that seals are set on his heart and ears, veils are drawn over his eyes, his potentials to see, to think, and understand, become suspended and are gradually paralyzed. After this it is stated that it is only the guidance of Allah which can save him from this misguidance. They are the people who keep blindly following behind their animalistic emotions." 45. 23. 7.32.1 Convert Iblis into a Muslim. The Quran has not told them that they should destroy their emotions and not maintain any connection with them. It has stated that he becomes misguided who follows his own emotions without the guidance of Allah. 28. 50. Here the Quran has made the matter crystal clear that human emotions are not shar. They become evil at that time when they are left unrestrained. If they are kept within the obedience of the permanent values, then their outcome is care. This is that reality where a hadith of Rasool which shines like lustrous pearls has been explained in a very eloquent and heartwarming style. Rasool said that every human being has an Iblis. The companions inquired, "Is there also an Iblis of yours?" He replied, "Yes. I too have an Iblis, but I have converted my Iblis into a Muslim." 7.32.2 Iblis can be made to obey oneself. Just see from where the issue began and where it has ended. Emotions were not destroyed, they were left in the state they were in, but they were employed according to the divine permanent values. In this way, this immense force, instead of being destructive, became completely constructive, that is, the flood was confined within the banks of the river. And in this way, instead of becoming the cause for destructions, it became the reason for habitations and prosperities. The same way in which potentials have been kept within man to harness the forces of nature, he has also been bestowed with the power to harness his emotions. In the account of Adam it has been stated metaphorically that when Iblis was cursed, he said to Allah that "You have humiliated me for this favorite of yours, now watch what I do with him. By inserting a leash through his nose, I will lead him bewildered and stumbling about, and then will destroy him in such a way that he will never forget it." 17. 62-63. In response to this challenge of Iblis, it was decreed from the court of Allah that attempt to do whatever you wish, but you will never be able to achieve any control and authority over my servants. 17. 65. Iblis will never be able to influence those people who maintain conviction in the truth of the laws of Allah and have trust in their firmness. 38. 83. His influence will be effective on those who totally sidestep the laws of Allah, or on those who, though they will not completely avoid them, they will not purely follow these laws, instead they will also associate non-divine laws with them. 16. 99 to 100. 7.33 The model of Yusuf. The state of those who follow Allah's laws is such that leaving aside obeying shaitan, if even the thought of shaitan somehow randomly enters their mind, they immediately bring Allah's laws in front of them, and from this such a sparkle is created in their vision due to which their paths become illuminated far into the distance, and their feet simply do not lift to tread in the wrong direction. 7. 201. This was that very Burhani rab seeing which Yusuf tore to shreds the webs of Shaitanat laid by the wife of the Aziz of Egypt, and in this way demonstrated to that world that shaitan can never overwhelm the devoted servants of Allah. He was from among our devoted servants. 12. 24. At this juncture an objection is raised from those with superficial minds that it is all very well to have the power to confront shar in man and overwhelm it. But why did Allah establish such a system in the first place in which this tussle continues between these two forces? What was the purpose of this? 7.34 What is its purpose? Those who raise such objections do not even ponder that this confrontation was an essential consequence of man being the holder of choice and intent. As we have already written, being the possessor of choice and intent means that there should be two possibilities before him, and he should have this authority that he can select one out of the two. The one who does not have two paths before him, only one path exists, the question of his making a choice of path does not even arise. Only the one before whom no other path exists is called constrained. There is no opportunity to reflect, or differentiate, and select between the right and wrong direction on the path on which there are no crossroads. In the journey of life, this is that choice at a crossroad where human potentials become awakened. This is what is called a challenge. The reality is that there is a law of evolution functioning in the universe, and the very essence of evolution lies in challenge. According to this law, strength and loftiness can only be achieved in a situation where opposing and challenging forces lock with each other. Life is a continuously flowing stream, but if in its path there are no rocks creating falls, then its tranquil flow will gradually become converted into a motionless state, and this dynamic stream will become a still and stagnant pond. Latent lyrics within the strings of a guitar will never come alive unless the strings are plucked. Shine and glitter can never be created in the reflective blade of a sword until the time that it is not sharpened on a stone. The embers of a flame are not possible without the rubbing together of stones. This is that very law of confrontation and resistance through which there is awakening of the latent potentials of man. This is termed as the manifestation of his ego or the strengthening of his self. If ego does not confront its opposite, then the dynamism of the universe will freeze, the colors in the arena of life will become drab. This world of color and fragrance will again convert into an abode of mud and clay. The heat of the blood in the veins of the universe owes itself to the desire of the human ego to manifest itself, and the thrill of its confrontation. This is that reality which Iqbal has expressed in this stirring way. Do not live in such a colorless world, one in which Allah exists, but no shaitan. In his book, Baal-e-Jibreel, Iqbal has expressed this same reality in the form of a dialogue between Iblis and Jibreel. Gabriel. In this Iblis says to Jibreel that, when you gain access alone to Allah, ask him, whose blood was it that colored the story of Adam? This is the status of shaitan in the light of the Quran i.e. that tussle between the animalistic and human life of man, which becomes the means to bring out his latent potentials, and in which man at every moment, through his self-accountability, keeps witnessing and evaluating how much strength has been created in his self. Life as a human being. This is declared by the Quran as being the tussle between haqq and batil, in which haqq, constructive program, ultimately overpowers batil, destructive program. We keep striking the head of batil with the hammer of haqq, until the brain of batil is burst open and it leaves the arena, fleeing. 21. 18. In the human world, this supremacy of haqq appears with electrifying speed in a collective system which is established according to the permanent values of Allah. Contrary to this, the system of batil in which animalistic passions are allowed to cavort freely, creates obstacles for haqq at every step. This is the reason that the Quran has stated that, have you ever pondered on the state of such people who in their own hearts think that they possess iman, but whose practical condition is such that they establish that kind of system in which the decisions of their affairs are taken according to non-divine laws, taghut or shaitan, even though they were commanded to repudiate these. And this is indeed what shaitan desires, to lead them far into misguidance. 460. From the above explanations, this reality will have become apparent to you what the meaning and purpose of shar and khair, or aharman and yazdan, is according to the Quranic point of view. It can be illustrated in a few succinct words as two techniques for utilizing the forces of nature and human potentials themselves. If these are employed according to the divine permanent values, then the outcome is constructive. If employed counter to these, then they produce destructive results, and man possesses the choice that he can adopt whichever one he wishes out of these two techniques. Whichever technique he chooses, the outcomes will be established in accordance with this. In other words, they will become khair or shar accordingly. This ensuring of outcomes from the forces of nature, and from one's own potentials themselves according to personal goals, has been termed by Iqbal as a taqdeer smashing force when he wrote that there remains yet a taqdeer smashing force in him, while the ignorant call him a prisoner of taqdeer. This is that same thing which was termed by Caliph Umar as changing direction from one taqdeer of Allah to another taqdeer of Allah himself.